Gentrification is just when people began to move into a neighborhood and it's been, you consider it, can only speak for Grier Heights for gentrification. I can't speak for every neighborhood because I'm not there, I'm not on the ground. But in Grier Heights, it's always had a mixture, okay? Now what happened in Grier Heights when we say gentrification, the houses that we had in Grier Heights became dilapidated, and what happened is the nonprofits and other investors came in, they began to buy the properties, and so when they bought them, it kind of forced the people that couldn't afford them out. So, lack of a better word, it was an income distribution. Does that make any sense? Because I want to be clear about our community. And now, let me speak on the broader sense of gentrification. Yes, they are completely taking Black communities, and they're not just like Cascade Circle. This is the perfect example. Cascade Circle, because one of your questions about do I know people there? That was a middle class neighborhood for the people that after the war, Vietnam War, they came back and they began to develop, and then people from Brooklyn, when they destroyed Brooklyn, that's another area. They call it urban renewal back then, so that's why I say it's nothing new. It was urban renewal. Now what's the new word? Gentrification. The same thing, and I'm gonna say this on camera. The same thing the government has been telling Black folks they're helping them, and in the same time they're sticking them in the back. Urban renewal destroyed Brooklyn. Urban renewal destroying all the Black communities.
But I would come back, and this is, certainly for a bigger perspective is Charlotte in general. Every time I would come back, something was gone and something else was in its place, newer, And so it was dramatic in that way. But certainly for my community, there's always been kind of a struggle in terms of keeping the community vibrant in terms of businesses and financially secure, economically secure. So as things started to change, and you see the things that are happening in the communities and old neighborhoods being citizens being pushed out to some of the outer edges of the communities and lower, because of, certainly the housing issues as we see now, that has always been a concern. And I still have family that lives in Greertown and friends. And so, some people, everybody wasn't forced to move, but some of the lower income folks, well, if you sell out, where do you go? In these days, you cannot afford to buy, in terms of comparable homes in Greertown versus someplace else. So there's a real dilemma, and it's difficult, because that has been the challenge, and that whole process of construction companies and builders seeing this as prime property in Grier Heights. You can stand in Grier Heights and see the skyline of uptown Charlotte. So it's a valuable property, and there are people trying to hang on. And so it's been one of concern. It's the same thing that's happening all over the country. It's not just unique, certainly, to Charlotte.
What happened, we met with these, Miles Park, whoever it was, we met with them. And we wanted to keep everybody in the community that we could, instead of them coming in building these big old houses, and they said that they would do that, and we met with them about 4 or 5 times. They showed us the plans and everything. And we said, okay, we'll go along with that. But that never happened. The total thing changed, And they started, instead of them buying affordable houses where it's going to be $175,000, $100,000 home that people could move back into, it ended up $250,000, $300,000, $350,000, and I don't know what it is now. And my people couldn't afford that. I know they could, And it was a lie. It was a lie like they did in Brooklyn. Same thing. It was a lie. And now they really can't afford it now. But we was all for it when it first started. Because the way they sound like they was going to keep as many people here, they're going to rebuild the community. But that was a total lie. So I was disappointed.
Grier Heights people needs to get more involved because I think Myers Park is taking over Grier Town, in my opinion. They say that they're helping and want to help improve Grier Town, but now there's more in the new homes that they built. It's more whites living in them than there is black. And eventually, and someone's always calling my sister about selling her house. Like, where is she gonna live if she sell her house? She lives right here with a pretty yard is right there in the corner. And she takes care of her place. But they are always, every spot that comes open, they're building a new home. But it ends up, whites are usually moving into those homes. So, and I used to call this Myers Park Extension. Now I'm calling it Myers Park.
So when you talk about gentrification and what's going on with the people in the neighborhood, the ones who are challenged, underserved, underrepresented, and got their lives, and they're just too busy to be involved in it. A lot of them, they see it's happening, but it's like, they're like, okay, what do we do about it? Because we can't stop it. I'm of the different mindset that we can't stop it, but we can definitely slow it down and do something to preserve what we have. Let's preserve something. Let's not just like clean the whole slate out and then just like put something else on top of it. So when you talk about gentrification in this particular community, but like I said before, we're surrounded by affluent communities. So already you got that against you. And you got organizations moving over here that's not really being impactful with all the money that they're spending here. That's another thing. And then you got the folks in the neighborhood that's not really engaged in it.
My take on gentrification in Grier Heights is that, I don't believe that, a lot of people want to stop gentrification, and I don't believe that you can stop it. However, I do believe that you can educate others about the importance of the community, the importance of the history, and the importance of investing, for home ownership in the community. Grier Heights has a lot to offer. In addition to the history is its location. The location, I have to say, you can almost get anywhere in 20 minutes. But when you think of that historical significance and the role that you would be playing, as an African American in really continuing that legacy and helping to build up the community, I think it's like none other. And so, as people look around and they think about, where should I live? Where should I go? I think that this is the place to be. It's also, it helps others to see other African Americans, not just other races moving into your community, but it helps, because it is a historically African American community, other African Americans moving back in and saying, this is important to us to continue this legacy.
So my take on gentrification and its impact on Grier Heights is that I always look at it from a lens of the people, as always. And so when you think about the Grier Heights community, about 80% of this community is comprised of rental. It's 80% rental. And so when I think just about the historic nature of this community, it was built to ensure that African Americans had a fair chance of housing. Then, of course, throughout the time, things have changed. And so you see this 80% rental community, and you always inquire, well, what are ways that we can shift that 80% to become homeowners? And I think, initially, it was not something that was at the focal point, but as time goes on, you realize that stability in housing is a need for all. And so for me, some of the issues are that, there's obviously affordability that comes into place. But before we can even get into affordability, we have to also think about some of the basic needs. And so some of the basic needs can be centered around food, but some of the basic needs can also be centered around employment or even the understanding of financial literacy. And so here at the community center, we try to ensure that we provide programming and resources that basically cater to all of those needs to ensure that we do improve the quality of life that also leads to home ownership eventually. And so for us, yes, we cover all the grounds of education, employment, financial literacy, but we also have a component of home ownership. And so that is walking hand in hand with our residents to ensure that they have every single step along the way checked off their box so they can acquire home ownership.